Please welcome to the stage the UCET Through the Eras panel, featuring past UCET presidents.
Yeah, come on up. So we'll be on the ends if you guys want to fill in. Trisha, you want to come up and be part of this first group? Come on up. Yeah. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching this, because it looks like most of you will be watching the recording instead of the actual live broadcast. We are ready to get started. We've got some wonderful guests with us today. For the recording, my name is Jared Covilli. I was the UCET president in 2012. What we like to refer to as the golden age of UCET, but you know, some people may not feel quite the same way that I do. With me?
Hi, I'm Kelly Cannon, also from Jordan District. And I guess I'm going to explain a little bit about why I chose to do this. So number one, Taylor Swift is my favorite. I know we have Taylor Swift fans out here somewhere. I think you guys know who that is. Yes? Okay.
A lot of blank stares from the audience out in the crowd and from our panelists.
I do actually know who Taylor Swift is, yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay, they know who Taylor Swift is. And you know how she had her Eras tour last year. So about a year ago, I started brainstorming, how could I bring this to UCET, and how could I have these different presidents come? It's our 45th year of UCET, and so I thought, you know, we need to catch some of these people before they, maybe a lot of them are retired already, before they retire and go other places. So that was kind of my inspiration. And then they also donated a lot of stuff for our Eras booth, which is in the expo hall right now. So we're grateful to see that old technology. I did have to put some of it into Gemini to see what it was and what year it was created, because I didn't know what it was. So, okay. All right. Yes, I'm in control of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kelly's in charge. That's us, just so you know who we are again. And we'll jump in and start talking about some of our panelists. So we've decided to split our panel into two eras, which really go over many eras, because there's just so many great folks that have been involved with UCET. I'm going to sit down too for recording, so to help us just a little bit. So first, Kelly's got a slide that kind of talks to us a little bit about all the different people who are going to be involved. So, first you can see the wonderful look at UCET through the years. A couple of our panelists were at the first UCET conference, which was back then UCCE. That may be a trivia question where we have to know what UCCE had stood for. So we'll find out that a little bit. But you can see the iterations of the conference as we've gone through over the past 45 years.
Okay. And then there is our list of past presidents. And then we tried to get your year correct. We're hoping we got the right year.
And we may not have everybody's name on here, but we're going to go down the panel, down the row, and let everybody kind of introduce themselves just a little bit and find out a little bit about what year you were involved and kind of what you remember about your conference. So to my right is Kathy Webb. She's going to tell you what year she was UCET president and kind of a little bit about her conference.
All right, so because there was a cheat sheet, I was elected, or actually non-elected in 2001 because there was not a candidate who was willing to run, so they just assigned
That
it
never
to
happens on the UCET board, just so you know.
And then so my conference was 2002, and the name of it was Teaching and Learning in the Visual Age.
Wow, see? Everything comes back again. We've had that a couple times.
Yep.
Where was your conference held?
Oh, we did it at Cottonwood High School.
Okay. So my first UCET was also at Cottonwood High School, but maybe a couple years later. So
And I think it was $35 to get in, and that included food.
hot food back then, right?
Yeah.
Our conference was small enough that we had like made meals that you could get and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Rick, why don't we go to you next? What year was your conference? Tell us a little bit about what you remember about your theme and things.
Rick Gaisford, and I was first elected to the board in 1997, and my term of presidency was 1999 to 2000. Our conference that year was held at Copper Hills High School out in West Jordan. I think one of the more memorable things is that we had a network loop that occurred. And so it was a conference very much focused on the internet but the internet didn't work.
That never happens at UCET, where we
Wait,
don't have
they
internet.
had internet in 1997? Must have been the first year.
Oh,
Yes,
honey.
Kelly.
We're going to hear a lot of those kind of comments from Kelly throughout the panel today, just so you know.
I can sit down, it's fine.
All the things that we could tell.
And
That's why
the
you're
year
here.
that you had that conference, I assume Copper Hills was a relatively new high school probably then.
Yes, it was. It was probably in its third. It was in its third year, and so it was. But we did get with UEN's help. We did get the network issue finally resolved. Sometime on the second day.
And one thing that I always loved about kind of that era where we were in high schools, it was really a chance for UCET to not only showcase technology, but to showcase these new buildings that were coming out, right? It felt like most years we would travel around to different districts and see what their buildings look like and how they had changed them and modernized them and all these kinds of things. So
It was an opportunity for the schools to plead with their districts for upgraded technology too, in order to host us.
And I think some of what we found, a lot of us out here will remember that once a building kind of got those upgrades, we tried to stay there at least a couple of times if we could.
Threw us out.
Till they threw us out. Which happened usually after the third year. So, Guy, why don't you go next for us?
Okay, I was president in 1997 to 1998. My year of being president, we held it at Copper Hills for the first time. But I was not the conference chairman. Back then, typically our conference chairman was the past president, not the president. But the year I was president, for those of you that remember this guy, the keynote speaker was a young man named Steve Wozniak. If that name means nothing to you, his partner at Apple, Steve Jobs, probably does. And
They all know who he is because they watch The Big Bang Theory.
he was, yeah, he was very gracious. He was a wonderful speaker. The next year I was conference chairman. My theme was women in technology, and I invited
Love that.
the USOE at that time, technology director, former ETI director, Dr. Vicki Dawn, who several years before had been president of UCET at least once. And for those that don't know, UCCE, that was the predecessor, was Utah Council for Computers in Education, and that's what it was as Kathy Webb and I joined the board, but they passed the constitutional change for the change of name. And what was the last thing? Yeah, I told who my keynote was.
And
it was
that
an
was
obvious
back-
choice to get Vicki because of women.
Remind us what year the name change happened. You said about 90.
I believe it was 94.
So the name UCET then is almost, 31 years old now? So
Yes.
But UCCE was around for a decade or more.
More than a decade. For those that also don't know this, the three founders of UCET, who were the first couple or three presidents, it was Clark, I can't remember his last name, but go
Was
ahead.
it Walton?
No, well, that wasn't Dave Walton. He came
Dave
several
Walton.
years later. But this fellow actually was working on a master's degree at BYU, and the founding and creation of UCET was a master's degree project for him.
So if we go full circle with a lot of this stuff, so UCET was someone's master's degree project back in the day where they made no money for it, and now everybody's making their master's projects companies like Instructure where they retire at the age of 30. So that's how it all goes over the last 25 years, right?
The technology has changed enormously.
Yeah. Tricia, why don't you go next for us?
I think I was in 2015. And the theme of my conference was Tech Elevated. We were out at Harriman High School, and we had our keynote speakers were Vicki Davis, cool cat teacher, and Jay McFarland, former KSL radio show host. And the funnest thing about that conference was still the fact that I jumped out of an airplane. That was fun,
yes,
wasn't it,
listen to
guys?
the audience go wild. Several of our audience also jumped out of that same plane, and they're still here to tell the tale. So.
Yep.
Chris, why don't you go next for us?
Yeah, I was elected in the infamous 2020 election.
Yeah, tell us. Nothing happened then. What?
Yeah, I was also unopposed, so I won in a landslide. My conference was held in 2021, and it was, to my knowledge, the only time the conference was virtual due
Correct.
to the COVID pandemic. I was elected the conference of, not to rain on, I guess Pam's not here, so I can share
Yeah,
that story.
talk about Pam's conference a little bit.
Pam Turley was the president for 2020. As a board, we snuck in the conference literally the day that everything shut down. So we had international visitors that had to be sequestered off and rushed home. The governor dismissed schools the next day
Right.
at 4 p.m. So we barely, maybe not the next day, 2 days later, it was the
Yeah.
Friday of the week of the conference that
Right.
occurred. So yeah, as soon as I was elected, it became very clear that it was going to be
The world ended,
a different
literally
type
like
of
the day you
year.
were elected.
Yeah. You could say I was elected in the year 1 BC before COVID. We're now in, we're now 4 years out after, or 5. But it was interesting. My keynotes were 2 young ladies, Gitanjali Rao and Olivia Van Ledge. They were both student keynotes.
Which is a first for us, I think.
Yeah, one of them was a 12-year-old and one was a 14-year-old. She's now a freshman at MIT.
Wow.
They were both, one of them was the Time Magazine Kid of the Year. They were really inspiring, and virtual gave us an opportunity to bring people in that probably wouldn't have been able to come in person otherwise, so that was a benefit. We had a war room at the Marriott in Provo. The board was there in person, kind of running the virtual conference. And it was interesting. I feel like it was a success. We had about 500 people attend, but it was definitely unique.
Well, and kind of a flashback, it's kind of funny when you say the board was all at a hotel kind of running the conference, because Guy and Rick and Kathy, you guys would probably say that's kind of where the conference started, was in like a hotel ballroom and just smaller venues like that as it grew.
Harmon Conference Center at BYU was the first place I attended it. Rick, do you remember the Copper Hills one where we had 8 inches of snow and nobody showed up?
Yeah. Well, I showed up.
So did I, but
And I showed up.
yeah, the board was there.
Yeah, we used to think that 8 inches of snow was the act of God that would really ruin the conference, and then Chris came along, and he showed us what a real act of God would look like.
We had 1,000 registered and maybe 200 showed up.
And while we're up here, we might as well ask Jared, tell us a little bit about your conference. I know you want to.
Well, I can tell you that my conference was at Jordan High School in 2012, and I was trying to take things in a new direction, so I had a non-technology keynote. We had Rulon Gardner, the former Olympic wrestler, who was also a disgraced Biggest Loser contestant. And I think he talked as much about being on The Biggest Loser as he did about being an Olympian, which was awesome because our theme was all about going for the gold. So I think the only real memorable thing from my conference was Katie Blunt did the first UCET flash mob. Oh, you can still hear it. It's ringing through the rafters. And I think the only real question was when I was running down the aisle with an iPod with a flame on it, whether or not I would trip myself and fall face first into the stage, which I did not do, thank you.
Jared, didn't your keynote not arrive until right when it was starting?
He
there's
literally
always
showed up
just
like 5 minutes
the
before.
fear or the stress of snowed-in pandemic.
Yeah.
You had a keynote who
And we had one year,
some
the
of
year
our other
before
presidents'
me,
keynote didn't come at all. But
some of you will remember this, the year before me, our keynote didn't show up, right? It was the guy out of Kansas that showed up like 45 minutes into his keynote, he got there. So we had the superintendent of Kansas district just kind of do a little soft shoe up there on the stage and fill in for him a little bit. So lots of fun memories, though, of some of these conferences. Kelly, you got another question for everybody?
Yeah, I just think, that shows like how UCET has been able to endure through the hard times. So great job, everyone. And teachers, we have to be flexible, right? Fake it till you make it. All right, so our next question, we kind of already talked about your location and your conference, where it was held, and your keynotes, so we'll keep going through here. So we've mentioned, there are different places that the conference was held, high schools, we have the Salt Palace now, so just what were some of the goals for your UCET? Like what in educational technology were you hoping people walked away with?
I mean, Guy, you mentioned your theme was kind of around women in technology, so that was obviously...
I was kind of biased. I have 3 daughters, and I wanted to see, especially because tech has been traditionally such a male-dominated field, and I'm biased because I have 3 daughters, and I wanted to see that opportunities in STEM fields, engineering, technology, and so forth, were made more available, and I wanted them to see role models, which is why I've invited Dr. Don to come and be our keynote speaker. As a side note, at that time, USOE did not allow Apple computers into the building. She wanted an Apple, so instead of giving her an honorarium, we gave her an Apple Macintosh computer.
Perhaps the first one that ever graced
One of the
the state office.
One of the bowling ball iMacs.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Kathy,
green.
you mentioned that your theme was around visual learning. What was the intent behind that kind of a little bit? What were you thinking as you kind of developed some of that into your conference?
Well, a lot of the talk at the time around technology was this drill and kill kind of thing, and how the computers were going to teach kids with programmed learning, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't talk about drilling and killing kids, that we used it as a creative tool. So that was why teaching and learning in the visual age, we wanted to make sure people understood that computers were tools, not teachers.
Really good. Rick, you even brought your old book up to kind of tell us a little bit about your ideas for your conference. So
That's because my conference was 26 years ago, and there's a lot of cobwebs.
So we blew the dust off of that program. What did you find out as you read through that?
I don't remember what the theme was, but the program for that conference, which happened to be at the UCET booth, and you can go see some of the past programs, and it's really interesting to go through them to see what was the focus. But the theme in the year 2000 was technology to kids, so somewhat playing on the Y2K theme.
And that is making a comeback right now. My 7-year-old twins, 2 girls, they're obsessed with Y2K right now. They think the fashion is very cool, or Sigma, or whatever they say now.
Good to know
Love
we're coming
that.
back into style.
Everything comes around again.
But I think as I looked through the program, what struck me, and it was really about how can technology be used to help kids and to improve and enhance and make brighter the education of students and that. And the internet was still basically a new thing, and so lots of the sessions were focused on technology tools and resources that were to help kids to be able to learn in different ways and to be able to see different things and to be able to really explore the world.
Oh, that's great.
If I can ask a follow-up question. So you have this program. I remember when we started talking about this, Jared pulled these packets out of his desk, and I said, "What is a program?" So for those of us who are in the later eras, can you kind of explain what that program is about? Just for the record, because they're all in the vendor hall, but we don't know what they are. So.
Well, we had printed programs, but this was all of the sessions, all of the vendors, and they would write up what they were going to do. So it's actually a nice treasure to have, on the back end of all of this, is that we have all of that.
There's a listing of the candidates in most of them too that were
voting,
running for
everything
office
kind of
that year.
happened. Yeah.
So,
That is
one of
awesome.
the innovations for our conference, when I came on, one of the things I decided to do, because if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, I felt like we needed to have a database, and so we designed the program for the year prior in FileMaker Pro, and then I added to it on it, and then the year after we still used it. So instead of using a spreadsheet to figure out what to do, we put it all into a database and made all the relationships we needed so that we could pull everything out by...
Which was huge.
Yeah, whether it was by audience, by level of complexity, theme, by speaker, by vendor. So we were able to create a program that would let you find exactly what you needed, including a grid, and I was really proud of that.
And you did it without AI. That's even more impressive.
Well, and I remember when I was first on the board, watching some of the programs being created, because they would just use Adobe products to make the program so that we would have it, and we'd have to get it to the printers, and then we'd have to make sure we had enough copies and all of that. And now we have people that come to the registration desk and are like, "Don't you guys just have a printed program? I really don't want to use this electronic tool that I've got. And I'm like, okay, well.
Lots of debate the first year we decided to move away from it. You know, because we knew that there was an audience that was what they were used to. I think Robert's out in the audience right now. We'll ask him when he comes up in a second. But there was that year where we kind of did a hybrid where we had a little, I think it was your year, right, Robert, where we kind of had a little paper stapled program and got away from the big book, but still kind of needed both of those. Tricia, your year was tech elevated. What kind of was led to that? What was kind of your goal as you were president in 2015?
Well, I remember that Katie Blunt actually came up with the concept of that theme, and Hakkarainen, I think you were involved in that as well.
They just wanted to jump out of an airplane. I'm telling you, that's what, if they said anything, that's why.
We were playing off the Life Elevated from Utah, so we had a lot of Utah focus that year because we really wanted to remember that we were a Utah-based.
Lots of local companies were involved.
Yeah, but also, again, the idea that tech is just a tool and it can elevate anything you need it to. Yeah. It's never going to replace the people. It's going to be there to help you do more as a person than you could have done otherwise.
Oh, that's great. And Chris, because of your unique circumstances, your goals kind of had to change from what you thought you would probably do when you were president to what the circumstances allowed. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, our theme during the conference of my year was refresh, and it was a play on refreshing a website, right? But also, we were coming out of the pandemic. You all lived it. I don't need to re-explain it, but it was like, it's gonna last a week, it's gonna last 2 weeks. We were still doing remote things. We wanted to not add a lot to teachers' plates, but provide them with an opportunity to still connect. We toyed with, like, do we even hold the conference this year? Do we cancel it? So it was looked at as a way to both, like, give people an opportunity to reconnect, but also when a website is broken or needs to be updated, you click refresh. I think the pandemic allowed us to look at what's important and kind of strip down all the extras that we had, and teachers were having to shift to online learning and distance learning, and so we were looking at it through that lens. I think it's interesting the tools that you all mentioned that helped facilitate your program. So we had FileMaker Pro, we have the implementation of school-like tools like Sketch that we use for the online. We had to use a platform that we've never used and probably will never use again in my year, where we had breakout rooms and a keynote room, and there's kind of this parallel, like, we're teaching people about tech, but we're also using different kinds of tech to facilitate the event, which I think is an interesting thing to think about.
Great comment, and it really embodies what UCET's all about, is that we have to be adaptive and see what tools are there and what they can do and how they can influence learning. Let's go to our next question, Kelly.
Yeah, the word that comes to my mind is innovative, which goes into our next question. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. We'll play that later. Okay, so maybe just like a really short answer from everyone. What were the hottest ed tech trends of your era?
When Kelly posed this question to me, she asked if fire was the big innovation the year that I was president.
Well, maybe
so
electricity.
Hopefully it's not that bad for any of us, but
yes.
Maybe let's start with Chris and we'll work this way. We'll kind of reverse it.
Yeah, I think just building off of what I just said, at the time, the biggest trend was that shift to remote meetings, remote teaching. We had talked about flipped learning or flipped classrooms for a number of years before that. There was even a Utah conference for a couple of years that was pretty popular. That was kind of a cousin to UCET, Flip in Utah.
The first time we ever saw Michael Hakkarainen do a backflip into a ball pit.
And, but I think this was the time when people were truly pushed into, without a choice, using remote tools or virtual learning. Many UCET people had used IVC classrooms or remote. Rural parts of Utah were ahead of us in their ability to pull off remote learning, but we had to do it as a conference. And so I think those were the trends of our time: Google Meet, Zoom, etc.
Yep. Go ahead, Tricia.
I don't remember. Like, I seriously don't remember.
Can I answer for Tricia?
Sure.
Just
Please,
because,
go ahead.
kind of coming full circle, as a teacher, my first year of attending UCET, I was thinking through, was Tricia's year of Tech Elevated, and I want to say Google Classroom was brand new.
Yeah.
Right at the time was being rolled out. And I left UCET as a classroom teacher and implemented Google Classroom the next day or next week. So it was.
I would think that was a huge transition for us from tools like Blackboard and, I'm trying to think what some of the other ones were.
Moodle.
Moodle, but there was one more.
WebCT.
WebCT. We'd kind of shifted into Canvas really around 2015. Like that was kind of those first couple of years where UEN was starting to push it and everyone was starting to adopt it. So that was probably a big one. Guy, how about you back in 1997?
Well, I got to say that when I started teaching, and for the first 10 years, I still had a CompuServe account. And
Kelly's about to Google that, just so you know.
yeah, okay.
What is that? I don't know what
I remember using Netscape and Mosaic and stuff like that. But I want to divert from this for 1 second just to mention the two people to my left. Kathy, I view Kathy Webb as the mother of internet in K-12 education.
Oh,
in
let's
Utah.
hear it for that out there, audience.
I really do. Kathy was an innovator right from the start. She went and got a Telnet, I believe, account at Southern Utah State College. It probably was at that
Back
time.
in those days, yeah.
And Rick as well. Rick has been involved in technology and education for 40 years. He's been a tech leader at the state office for many, many years. And I think they need to be recognized for their contributions to educational technology in the state of Utah.
Oh, thanks, guys. Let's give me a hand out there.
Okay, when I was, around the time I was president, I think the most prevalent technology, I can remember buying a Sony Mavic camera, digital camera for teachers.
That was the first technology I got in the
I
classroom.
bought an LCD plate because it was demanded, but I had also noticed that as I went around different places that I would walk into a classroom and they would have an LCD plate. Well, why aren't you using it? Well, it got bumped or it dropped and it doesn't work. Technology back then was very fragile and very expensive. The first LCD plate, which sat on an overhead projector, and some of you teachers probably don't even know what the heck an overhead projector is, but it was a projection device. And I believe the first one I bought probably cost $3,000.
Wow.
So that was my tech trend.
The internet was the hottest tech at that time, and I see a lot of parallels to what we're going through at this conference with AI. We're trying to make sense out of this new tool. That's exactly what we were trying to do in 2000. Was really trying to how can we use the internet to be able to engage students, improve our teaching and learning possibilities and that. And I see the same things happening. So I guess if you stick around long enough, you will see some things twice.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Kathy?
So we had a lot of sessions on creating with multimedia, and so there was Flash.
Yeah?
There was Macromedia something, and QuickTime, of course. So we had a lot of things about content creation, especially visual, auditory.
You know, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember any specific hot tech, but I do remember one picture that I took from behind somebody at my conference. My year, I think we were kind of shifting to where people had mobile phones now, right? They had iPads, and yet they were still using laptops and desktops at that time. And I had a picture of a guy who was sitting at a desktop machine that was provided by the school, and he had his laptop in front of him, and he was on his phone. So he had all three technologies kind of in front of him at the same time, trying to figure out how to navigate between all three. Because the computer had the software that they were probably studying for the class or the session, but yet he was taking notes on his laptop, and then he was taking pictures on his phone so that he could make sense of it all.
I remember a conference at Murray where I observed several teachers with laptops, iPads, and phones, all three.
Yeah, and remember we were trying to talk to them about how many wireless connections we would need, and they were just saying, well, you just need one per user. And it's like, no, we've shifted way past that. Like most users are 2 or 3 now.
And I feel like that's like an everyday occurrence in my house now. I don't know about you guys. We'll have 20 devices. Okay.
I think we have time for one last question with this group.
Okay, so the question and this is like a speed round. Jared says it's not quite speedy, but we're going to make it speedy. So a prediction that you have for the next 45 years of UCET, or the next 45 years of ed tech. Should we start with Kathy? Maybe on that end this time?
Oh, my. 45 years of ed tech.
What year would that be?
Well, so there's so many things we just
60? No. I can't
take
do
for
math.
granted.
No, yeah.
So,
Someone tell me the year.
yeah.
Thank
Or
you,
even just
Guy.
what you think is coming up
2070.
down the road.
Well, okay, so if I go away from the privatization and all of that kind of stuff, if I just think about the teaching and learning that happens, I know that there's a lot of talk about how AI is going to be the savior of education and kids are going to be able to learn from AI. I think we had something like that back in the early 2000s where they said, oh, the computers are going to teach kids.
Yep.
And they found out, yeah, no, that doesn't actually work in the real world. I think that there will be a lot more customization and a lot more speeding up of the core content, but I believe there'll be a lot more opportunities for depth going into the different domains that kids are interested in. So they come out of school with a lot better idea of how to learn what they're interested in.
Very cool. Rick, how about you?
Tough question. I think I'll put it in this context. I think if the earliest leaders of UCET could see and they did. We had Bob Ives here yesterday, who was president in 1984, and he was completely amazed at everything that UCET had become, and that the technology that was being used, and the technology is available. I think they could not even imagine what we have today. I find it venture to believe it'd be very difficult to decide what it's going to look like in 45 years, from when. But I can probably say, I would probably put it devices. What would you need that for?
Yeah. Go ahead, Guy.
It'll be neural or implants or something like that. In 45 years, which will be 2070, it will be 101 years for me since I graduated high school.
So we'll reserve your seat at the conference that year.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, when I began teaching, we had one lab in our high school with any technology. Half of the lab was Apple computers and a couple of IBM computers, old clones, and the rest of it was typewriters. I took type in the 8th grade, and that keyboarding skill has served me up through today. But I have no idea. I will remind you of an old song. Kathy will have known this song. In the year 2525. Okay.
Trisha, you want to sing the
Still
next verse of that
alive,
song?
yes.
I don't actually know that song. I'm
Oh,
gonna have
darn
to
it.
go look it up, just like Kelly.
Early Taylor Swift.
Kelly will go look it up.
Maybe Taylor will redo it for us. Cover.
As far as a prediction for the next 45 years of ed tech, I don't know, because people are amazing and they find amazing things to do, and you watch some of the things that are going on right now and you're like, I never would have thought of that, you know? Or you watch a show like How It's Made and you're like, oh, that's why they did that.
Yeah.
I understand that now. And I think we're just going to be surprised by all the things that people can do. I really hope we don't end up with something that's like The Last Library is this book that I just read. And The Last Library, there are no libraries. Paper does not exist, and people go around and scrounge for it because they need to find paper. You can make money off of finding scraps of paper, and I really hope we don't go there.
Do you read books, Kindle or paper?
I read all sorts of books because why should I limit myself to one genre and one type of book?
Oh, wow. Chris, let's wrap up this panel for this group.
I don't think I have any brilliant predictions other than I was sitting here reflecting of what it's going to be like when that's Danny, Andrew, and me, maybe 45 years from now, on the UCET Through the Eras panel. But
Well, we'll let you run it. I don't think I'll be on that panel.
We're gonna have Rick Gaisford in a wheelchair wheel him onto the stage.
Kelly, you can be on that
Yeah, you
panel
know
because
what?
in 45
Maybe-
years you won't be as old as I am
maybe
now.
my prediction is that we'll have a hologram of Rick Gaisford
Yeah.
on the panel.
Oh, we'll give the live Rick Gaisford last word here.
Dressed in a look like Yoda.
Well, thank you everybody for your time.
Hey, yeah, we really appreciate it. We're gonna bring up our
it.
Can I
next
just
group.
take one moment
Oh.
and thank all the past presidents? This is the reason there's an example here that when we have elections for this is an all-volunteer organization, an all-volunteer board, and the reason that UCET is still here and viable and is because of passionate people like you've seen here that have been willing to give time and of their talents to be able to make these kinds of things happen. And I just want to thank them for all of their
Thank you,
great
Rick. That's a
work.
wonderful thought to conclude that group on. Let's bring up another group. Robert, come on up.
Do we have any more past presidents here that haven't come up? We'll take you.
Oh,
We
Sharice is
want
coming
you.
up. There we go. Let's bring him up. All right. So we are fortunate to have several more of our past presidents in the audience right now. We're going to jump real quick into our first question. We'll let Robert kick us off. And if you guys will just kind of go down the row, what year was your conference held? And you can kind of see what was your theme and kind of your keynote.
Okay, so my year was 2013. I was right after Jared. And, it's
Nowhere
actually...
to go but up.
What's that?
Nowhere to go but up after that,
That's...
especially with the budget.
Our theme was retooling with technology, and the general idea is we as technologists in education take technology tools that are made for the consumer and find a way of utilizing that in our classroom.
Yeah.
I want to say Adam Bello was my keynote.
Correct.
And Leslie Fisher for the second day.
And
been a while.
what was your big video? We got to hear about your moment in the sun here.
You can go Google and see it on YouTube, but
Rob the Toolman Gordon.
Rob the Toolman Gordon and Katie Blunt directed it. I have to give her all the credit.
Yeah.
And it was a tough job directing me as an actor because that
That guy
the
would not
best
take direction.
scene in the whole thing, because it's obviously based on tool time, is when Rob the Toolman Gordon goes to talk to his neighbor, Wilson, and that's when Guy Durant is just looking over the fence. It was
Looking
the
over a
best scene
cubicle.
ever. So.
Can you still do the sound effect, Rob?
Not very well.
All right, Clint, let's hear about yours.
All right, Clint Stevens 2022 was the year of my conference. On the screen there, the far right graphic, the Connect. Connect was our theme. Brilliant logo there, Cody. I appreciate you putting that together for us. And this, ours, well, I was right after Chris Larson, right after we were fully remote, and kind of the first time we were able to be back in the same building with actual people.
Big celebration.
Yeah, it was a big celebration, and just the vibe and everything there was fantastic. Had Mike Roberts and Corey Henwood.
Oh, yeah,
We
local
wanted to amplify
keynotes.
some local voices that year that did our keynotes, and they did a fabulous job. And we were at UVCC.
Great. Andrew, let's talk about yours for a minute.
Yeah, so I'm Andrew Clark. My conference was in 2019. We were at UVCC, and my keynotes were Joe Sanfilippo and Steve Weller, and our theme was Tell Your Story. And we just talked about how teachers have this amazing story, and now they have tools that they could use to amplify that.
And so you can kind of see that we've had generations too of locations. We're about to move kind of where we were in the University of Utah with Michael.
Yes, and I was just having a complete like brain, you know what, trying to remember who was our keynote. It was Alice Keeler.
A very memorable keynote.
Yes. Yeah,
More
there
for
was,
her off stage than on stage. But
Hi, Alice, if you're watching. Thank you for a great keynote. The second keynote we had was Steph Davis, who was, I was trying to follow what Katie did. I don't want to steal your thunder, but she brought Thurl Bailey in, and we thought, what if we have an ed tech specialist like one day, and then just somebody from like, you know,
Mix
general. So we brought in a base jumping, rock climbing Moab resident, Steph Davis, to talk about fear, since that was something we were tackling with teachers being afraid to use technology. And that was at the University of Utah. That was 2017, correct? And then the torch was passed to Danny.
Yep. I was at the U in 2018, and my conference theme was UCET, as in Y-O-U-CET, and we were focusing on personalizing learning. And I almost had Manoush Zemarodi keynote for me. I got
there was
Manoush.
the blizzard of...
Yeah, there was a blizzard in New York, a skiff of snow.
Yeah.
And she keynoted from her house in New York City before it was like a cool thing to do, like the 2021 conference. No one was impressed, especially when she showed how much snow there was. And then also
We
Jeff
had more
Couch
snow
from
that
Apple.
day in Utah than she did where she was at.
That was a rough day for me.
Yeah.
And then the next day was Jeff Couch from Apple. But yeah, that
And we had a
conference-
nice video montage during your year as well. You want to talk about the Saturday Night Live parody?
Yes. So when I came to UCET and I got to see like the Tool Time skit, I thought that was hilarious. I loved Sharice's years, the movies. Like that was the only reason I wanted to be president. Was I just want to make my own videos, and so you too, if can make your own videos if you sign up to just like
Run a
7
conference,
short
yeah,
years of time
Servitude,
on the
yeah.
UCET board. But yeah, we did a Saturday Night Live skit, and it was super fun.
Great. Katie, let's hear about yours.
My year was 2016, so going back just a little bit, it was our very first year at the University of Utah.
Which was a big change for us.
It was. We had always been at high schools before that, but we were growing, and I think Michael was saying we doubled in attendance that year from the year before. Is that what you were thinking?
That was my estimate.
That was the estimate?
Yeah. 800 to 1,600, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So that was a lot to move venues, but I think it kind of launched us into then being able to move to the convention center and everything later. My theme was Tech Madness because it was during March Madness. And so, yeah, Thurl Bailey was my opening keynote, and then Ginger Lumen was the day 2 keynote. And the whole kind of idea with Tech Madness was to have some fun.
Yeah.
You know, it was Maker was getting big, gamification was a big thing, AR, VR. We just wanted people to dig in and be hands-on and have some fun and play with tech and think about how it could engage their students. So we had really big plans for what we were going to do to open that conference.
Yeah.
And then they got changed. I think Thurl's agent probably was like, no, that's not, no.
But then we got to see you guys play basketball.
Yeah,
a bit.
so instead we got some local talent.
We got Mike from Park City High
Yeah,
School.
Mike from Park City, and we got to play basketball. And then my brother-in-law, who is a former NBA player and is a broadcaster, just jumped right in and helped create our video, and we had a really good time.
High production value with that.
Yeah.
Sharice, let's hear about your year.
My year is 2014, and our theme was Spotlight on Learning. One of the things with our theme, LMSs were just really becoming very, very big and getting kind of mandated, I guess you could say. And so we wanted to kind of remind educators that the focus really and the spotlight really is on learning using all of these new apps and different things that are coming out. To be perfectly honest, so we had a couple of issues with my year. We had it planned for one set of days and then at a school, and then the school district changed their school calendar. And so we had to scramble and find a different school.
Innovation at its finest.
My keynote speaker could no longer do it on the new dates and the new times and stuff. So I honestly don't remember who my keynote speakers.
You had
From Canada.
From Canada, and he jumped in the air.
Yeah.
With the
Dean
shoes.
Shareski.
Dean Shareski, thank
Dean
you.
Shareski.
I was going to say Shariki, but that was just totally wrong.
But we need to see right now if we can get Andrew and Katie to reenact the Luke Skywalker Princess
for sure.
Leia moment from that conference.
I don't remember how that went. We did it, but I couldn't.
Andrew
tell you
was
what
in
I
a
did.
lot of angst
awesome.
during that video, trying to communicate.
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
You were very angsty.
Yeah,
lot
you
of
were like
angst.
me angsty,
and
then
and Katie was eating her buns on the side of her head.
Yes.
That sounds weird.
No, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So we
want to
had-
know if
we
you
had,
can
like, this
reenact the one
montage of-
Harry met Siri scene.
Yeah, we had these
No.
this montage of like movie clips that had slightly changed theme in that we put it around EdTech.
Yes.
And I'll tell you
Yes.
what, some of the performances were epic.
Google Gump.
Google Gump might be one of my favorites.
And
Exactly.
the Frankly, My Dear, I Don't Give a Damn from the You Need a Wiki badly
Yes.
skit was one of the
Yes.
highlights of that one.
One of the highlights for me, though, was day 2, because day 1, there were so many devices on the network that the network
that's right.
kept loading very slowly. And Frozen was like new and hot right then. And Katie went home and composed a song called Let It Load
Let It Load.
instead
yeah.
of Let It Go.
I have to
And
give Cody credit for the, and Derek, the credit for
Derek
the lyrics.
Larson.
But I did not know that song. I hadn't ever seen the movie. And these guys gave me these lyrics and said, go learn the, I learned and recorded it that night.
That night, and they brought it in, and for our opening session, we had Let It Load, and I'll tell you what, it was like the hit of the conference, because everybody was feeling that same pain.
So we're gonna mix things up. We're gonna do something a little different. We're gonna let this group kind of talk about some of their favorite UCET memories, since we haven't heard this question yet. Let's start. Trish, why don't you tell us one of your favorite UCET memories?
One of my favorite UCET memories, and I don't remember exactly which year it was, but David Pogue was the keynote speaker.
Oh yeah.
And it was for me kind of a transformational moment in my career, because the ideas that he put forth and just the enthusiasm that he used and everything made me realize what kind of an impact technology really was going to make in the future. And so to me, that was one of the greatest things. Oh, and I also wanted to mention 2014, I am responsible for it becoming instead of a 1.5-day conference, it became a 2-day conference.
Oh, there you go.
In 2014.
Wow.
So you're welcome.
Another innovation there.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, Katie. We'll kind of speed round this a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think I'm actually going to go back to Trisha's year, because first of all, jumping out of an airplane, that was pretty memorable.
Big deal.
But also just that, like, that was probably the first year, I'm looking at Trisha, probably the first year I was put in charge of activities, although I helped with yours and I helped with yours, but, and I got to be the one who coordinated with the Office of Tourism and all of the Utah's own businesses that came and provided the snack breaks and everything. And I loved that. I loved interacting, and it was sort of this Utah's awesome kind of moment for me. So that was a great year.
Danny?
I think like the most fun that I had at a conference was in 2015. I think it was the first year I was working for UEN, so not just doing, like one presentation, but doing a bunch. But it was, back when Twitter wasn't a hellscape. And like I had all of these amazing online connections with teachers, and I got to meet them for the first time in real life. It was just so much fun.
Super cool. Michael?
I can't think of one single moment.
No good memories, yeah.
That's good. No, they're all good. But I can sum it up with one simple thing. Every single good thing that's happened in my career as an educator since 2013 is because of connections I've made through UCET. Yeah. And if I could take one more minute, it was 2013 when the school district I was working at in Maryland decided to reorganize, and we all had to reapply for our jobs. And I thought, because have you ever been skiing in Maryland? Crickets. So I applied to a bunch of districts in Utah, and I sent one direct message on Twitter to UCET past president, who's not up here, Kelly Dumont. And he responded and started telling me about the Canyons District. And through Kelly, I met Robert, and then Darren Draper, and I was working there, and then Katie, who I never would have thought that my first day on the job, I met the woman that was going to marry me. To
True
someone
story.
else. I mean, she performed the ceremony. And then Katie said, you should run for this UCET board thing. And I was like, what, are you crazy? And then like 2 years later, they were like, you should run for president. And I was like, what? I met Jared, went to work at UEN, met Rick Gaisford, went to work at USBE. I owe it all to this group. So thank you.
Oh,
for letting
and
me
I think a lot of
be
people
part
would
of this
share similar
organization.
statements. Yeah.
Top that, Andrew.
We
I
made
really
this
like
video
the
of Jared
lunch.
Covilli and liking him to Neil Diamond. No, for me, my most memorable moments of UCET, as a college student, we had to take a class in the elementary ed preparation program that was technology in the classroom, and we had an option. We could write a really big research paper, or we could spend a couple of days or a day and a half at this UCET conference at Murray High School, and I opted to go to that conference, and there my eyes were open to everything that teaching with technology could be. And it felt like this is where I wanted to take my career and where the direction I wanted to take my students in as we moved forward in the future. And so that was it. Like just showing up and seeing like this is what UCET is, and it was fantastic.
Very smart professor to make that the other option, right?
Yeah.
I can either have to grade papers or you can go to a conference. Clint, let's hear about yours.
Probably my most memorable memory was the first time I attended as a teacher. And that was in 1997 at Murray High School.
Wow.
And they had this cool thing they were showing off in the library called the internet.
Oh.
I saw it for the first time. And actually, my dad kind of drugged me into technology. He didn't really drug me in, but definitely encouraged that at a young age. And so I brought him to the conference with me, and we just kind of marveled at the potential and what was going on with that. So that was probably my biggest memory.
I was going to say that one of my favorite UCET memories was, I think the year you were president was the first time I saw you wearing pants. So, I mean, that was pretty memorable. Like, crickets. I was waiting for Mr. Akarainen to comment on that, but I'm glad they took the mic from him. Robert, how about you?
So, I have so many memories of UCET and the people around UCET, being on the board, being the treasurer, being a president. But I'm going to go back, take a page out of Kathy and Rick's book a little bit. I remember stuffing bags for the participants the night before. I remember hauling laptop carts from other schools into the school, Copper Hills, Cottonwood High School, and then wiring, because there wasn't wireless, a lab in the classroom. We didn't even use switches then, Guy. They were routers? Hubs, thank you, hubs. And then when everyone left, we would then come back and take all of that down. I remember trips to Costco and loading my flatbed trailer with food for people for breakfast. I mean,
And do you remember the year that we had to give all that food away as part of the prize giveaway?
I remember.
Where people were coming up and taking pallets of food home with them.
Cases of yogurt on the front stage. You've now won. Go home, feed your family.
You've got a bunch of bananas. Good job. And you get an iPad.
And to see where we've been and to now see where we are here at the Salt Palace is mind-blowing. But most importantly is I've seen the direction of UCET change and how we are so much more focused on the curriculum and on students than we ever were when I started way back in, I don't remember when I joined, it was 2000 something. So there you go.
Okay. All right, thanks. Okay, so the last question that we have, and I really want everyone to answer this, is, I mean, Michael kind of already mentioned it in a way, but in what ways did UCET influence your professional development and or the educational landscape in Utah? So just kind of like looking at UCET's history, what did you guys bring to us? and what do you still see today?
Are you also going to ask us to make a prediction about 45 years from now, or is this the last
Well,
one?
I don't know. I don't know how much time we have.
This is the one, okay. Yeah.
This is a speed round, so since I
Speed
still
round.
have a mic,
Yep,
I'm going to
speed
go
round.
really fast. It was Macromedia, Dreamweaver, Fireworks. I learned so much about those products from UCET, and we're able to go back and teach those. You know, those were so important back in that day. I wish I could say I came here as a teacher. I didn't. I left my classroom. And yes, I taught with an LCD plate guy.
That's a good question. I didn't see this one beforehand. But really helped me grow as a presenter. You know,
For sure.
when I started doing this 18, 19 years ago. Like I submitted a couple of times as a teacher, never got my sessions in, but when I had the job, you know, doing this for my living, I got to present 2, 3, 4 times, and had some fun things back in the iPad heyday, the 60 apps in 60 minutes, in the big fishbowl room in whatever high school that was, I can't remember, but it was full. It was fun to present to a full room. So, yeah. So just and like Michael mentioned, just the connections you make throughout the job and with the people you meet at the conferences, and just
That's awesome.
Yeah, just being able to connect my teachers in Southwest Utah to, you know, the biggest and brightest minds in the state for
Andrew.
technology. Yep.
And I don't know why I always get stuck between like.
Yeah,
the really
you're
good
right
answers
between
and
it,
one. No, for me, like, it's helped me, like, some of the most influential people that I've met in my life have been through my connections at UCET. So I'd have to say, like, as much as we love technology, it's been the people that I've had the opportunity to interact with because of UCET that really helped to shape and focus my career and even my life. So.
Oh, thanks, Andrew. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, to echo what Rick was saying earlier about how the internet, you know, was what we were trying to figure out in 2000, and in 2025 we're trying to figure out artificial intelligence. The thing these all have in common, and the iPhones in our pockets, and the droids, and the 3 people who use Microsoft phones, but they're all about the connections, and I think that it's using the technology to allow us to connect with people we would normally not connect with, and be able to communicate in ways that some of us may struggle with. As long as we continue to do that, that's what this organization is all about, is leveraging the technology to make more human connections.
That's great. Danny.
You know, I think UCET really helped me to find my voice and have the confidence to speak in front of people who maybe had been teaching for a whole lot longer than I had. I was encouraged by my now boss's boss, but then professor, to present based on something that I had done in her class. And yeah, it gave me all the confidence in the world to keep going.
That's awesome. Katie.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what others have said, I became more of a lifelong learner and advanced in professionally because of UCET, because of the connections made here, and because of that, I also got my master's degree. And then, you know, Danny and I got our doctorates together because of these associations. And I think that parallels that educational landscape that we've been talking about, that it has also, UCET has been this vehicle to allow our you know, students to do the same thing, to learn in ways that work for them, to make connections they couldn't make otherwise, and to set them up to also be these lifelong learners who, you know, make these kinds of connections we've been talking about.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Blunt. Therese.
So for 28 years, I have worked in technical services at UEN, and it tends to be very isolating from the teachers and the students, and UCET gave me a way to stay connected to those educators and those students that I serve every day, and not to forget about them in all of the decisions that we're making.
Hey, let's give a hand to our past presidents up here. And Katie, or Kelly, come back up here. Kelly's got to come up for the wrap here. So I have to tell you, this idea came around, what, a year ago? We were kind of going through and thinking about, you'd seen all the posters and some of that. Come on over to the middle. And Kelly said, I want to put this together. And I was like, I don't know about this. Like, because I knew most of the people that we would try and get, and it would be hard and all this kind of stuff. But she was very passionate about this and developed the Eras booth out there, which has been a huge hit. So let's give Kelly a hand, because she did this. and to give us a chance as some of the past presidents to be up here and to be able to share a few memories and get to see some great old friends. So it's been really neat to be able to be part of that. So any last word, Kelly?
Okay, here's to 45 more years, 2070. Hopefully you guys all come back.
We need to get a picture with all of the past presidents
Yes.
up on stage.
That was our plan. So past presidents, please come up.
Guy, do you still have that Sony camera?
Thank you for coming, everyone.